It's coming from down there. It's coming from down there. There's got to be a room.
On an early morning in mid-June 2025, the lavish mansion of Sean Diddy Combs in Holmby Hills, long considered a symbol of power and opulence in the American entertainment world, suddenly became the epicenter of one of the most shocking investigations in FBI history. At first, the media offered only brief coverage, a federal raid linked to human trafficking allegations, but soon, information from an anonymous federal agent began to spread. The mansion's underground basement, nowhere to be found on any architectural blueprint, was, in fact, a child detention facility equipped with a strict surveillance system and prison-like living conditions. What initially seemed like rumor quickly turned into horrifying reality, marking the beginning of a chain of events that would unravel long-buried dark secrets. The question was no longer simply what is happening to Diddy, but rather who knew, who stayed silent, and how many people were complicit in the shadows behind the spotlight. 1. The mansion and the secret basement. Sean Diddy Combs' mansion sits deep within Holmby Hills, one of the most luxurious and private neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Towering hedges, electronic gates, and layers of security had turned the house into a modern fortress, one that no one could enter unless invited, and where even a single glimmer of light from inside was nearly impossible to glimpse. This mansion had once graced the covers of major interior design magazines, described as the perfect fusion of hip-hop spirit and contemporary architecture. From the infinity pool to the private recording studio, the state-of-the-art cinema room, to the vintage wine cellar, everything reflected the extravagance and total control of a man who built an entire entertainment empire. But behind those opulent walls lay a secret no one could have imagined, a basement that didn't exist in any official city records. When FBI agents raided Diddy's house that morning, they had no idea what they were about to uncover. An investigative source described the moment a hidden door was found behind a wooden cabinet in the recording studio, reportedly Diddy's most private space. On the surface, the cabinet looked like ordinary audio equipment storage, but upon closer inspection, one agent noticed something odd, a small, worn groove at the bottom, as if it had been frequently used. After removing the exterior wood panel, the team found a black steel door. No handle, no visible lock, impossible to pry open with conventional tools. They were forced to use specialized equipment to breach it. What followed felt like a scene from a crime thriller. The door swung open to reveal an underground passageway, cold and eerily silent. The tunnel stretched about 10 meters, flanked by bare concrete walls. No paint, no decoration. The air was thick and suffocating, a mix of mildew, sweat, and something else that defied description. It led to a larger space, where the FBI made a horrifying discovery. A series of small rooms laid out like prison cells. 6 rooms, each with a heavy iron door, fitted with a small electronic device likely for remote unlocking. Inside each room barely fit a single bed, a steel sink, and a ceiling bulb. No windows, no decorations. Nothing to suggest this space was ever meant for humans, let alone children. An agent recalled, "I've been part of many investigations, but I've never seen anything like this. It's not a storage bunker. It's not a panic room. This was built to detain, and there's no question about that." What was more terrifying was the clear evidence of prolonged use. Scratch marks marred the walls, as though someone had tried to carve names or mark time. One room bore faded scribbles in marker, simple heart-wrenching phrases like, "I want to go home, can anyone hear me, and I miss my mom." Faint as they were, those words stunned everyone at the scene into silence. There were no toys, no books, no signs that children were ever allowed out. One room still reeked of urine. Another had an old blanket curled up in a corner, as if someone had once hidden there to escape fear. The FBI recovered a few small items: hair ties, a pair of blue children's slippers, a tiny notebook filled only with incoherent doodles. Then came the flood of questions. How could such a space exist inside the home of one of the most powerful men in entertainment? How could it have gone unnoticed for years? No suspicious housekeeper, no party guest ever catching a glimpse. One investigator admitted, "We don't understand. Maybe everything was too carefully hidden. Maybe Diddy lived like a fortress. But one thing's clear, this wasn't built to hide cash or wine. This was made to hold people, and when it involves children, that's not a secret, that's a crime." Criminal psychologists brought to the site were visibly disturbed. They pointed out a crucial fact. The basement's design wasn't just about confinement, it was about total isolation. No natural light, no sound, no sense of time. It was, as one expert called it, a cage for the Minder place designed to erase hope. No official evidence has yet confirmed who built the facility, but investigators believe it was secretly constructed around 2015-2016, coinciding with Diddy's major home renovations. No one besides him and a trusted manager had access to the studio area, the very threshold to what now appears to be a private hell hidden in the heart of the city of dreams. The questions now are no longer if it happened, but how many children were kept there? How many people knew and stayed silent? And how long until the full truth finally comes to light? 2. The holding rooms. The moment the final door in the basement was opened, investigators realized they had stepped into darkness, not just literal, but moral. 6 rooms, 6 unnamed lives, 6 children hidden beneath a mansion the world thought only contained music, money, and power. The children found in that underground space weren't just victims, they were living accusations against a system built to erase all traces of its crimes. According to the FBI's initial report, 6 minors were discovered in the area, 4 girls and 2 boys, estimated to be between 10 and 17 years old. They were of various nationalities, including the US, Mexico, and Honduras. Some did not speak English or responded weakly when approached by rescue personnel. Their sunken eyes, panicked expressions, and instinctive aversion to light indicated they had been held under harsh, prolonged conditions. One girl, approximately 13 years old, was rushed to emergency care due to severe dehydration and physical exhaustion. She was unable to walk unaided and required immediate for fluids. The oldest boy, around 16 or 17, was initially aggressive and refused to let anyone near him, prompting the rescue team to lightly sedate him before transport. A volunteer nurse from a California child protection organization recounted the scene inside. "I couldn't sleep for days afterward. I've seen terrible things in my career, but these kids, it was like the world had forgotten them. No light, no words. We gave them bread and water and some just stared at it, too afraid to touch it." Investigators quickly noted signs that this wasn't the first time the children had been confined and likely not the only children ever held there. Some rooms showed evidence of previous use, names carved into the walls, tiny footprints in the dust, and scattered items like broken plastic spoons, bottle caps, and torn fabric, all collected for forensic analysis. One chilling detail shocked even veteran forensic psychologists in 2 of the rooms. Faint drawings were etched into the walls with fingernail stick figures. Crude suns, or the word help scribbled with a trembling hand. One investigator observed, "This kind of behavior is typical of victims in long-term isolation, trying to cling to any connection with the outside world." This matched early psychological assessments. The children had been isolated from society long enough to lose their sense of time and even of themselves. Experts explained that without natural light, a daily routine, or any temporal reference, victims quickly become disoriented and detached. One 14-year-old boy, temporarily identified as Lou, could only mutter a few words in Spanish, one of which translated to, "I don't know who I am." A translator later confirmed the boy could not recall his last name, didn't know who his parents were, and wasn't even sure where he came from. Experts believe he may have been abducted at a young age or subjected to psychological manipulation, possibilities that cannot yet be ruled out. In addition to poor physical condition and deep psychological trauma, several children displayed signs of behavioral control. Some refused to speak unless spoken to directly or responded mechanically in repetitive phrases. Preliminary medical checks revealed that 2 children may have been subjected to discipline based on old bruises on their backs and arms of unclear origin. Though no official medical report has been released, a source from the hospital caring for the children shared, "We're doing everything we can to rebuild their trust in adults. But for some of them, the idea of trust may have disappeared." Long ago, Los Angeles police confirmed only that the victims are safely in protective custody at an undisclosed location and declined to provide further information. However, a chilling detail emerged. Only 2 of the 6 children matched any records in the National Missing Persons database. The other 4 had no files. No one had reported them missing, no one had searched, no one even knew they existed. This fact makes the case more horrifying than any conspiracy theory. It raises a dire question. How many others may have been held here and where are they now? Experts suspect the basement might have been a transit hub used to temporarily hold victims before moving them elsewhere. The rooms were too small and lacking in amenities to suggest long-term habitation. Surveillance videos retrieved from the control room, where the encrypted security footage from the entire basement was stored, are still being decrypted. However, a source close to the FBI's digital forensics team confirmed that at least 3 child faces appear in the footage that do not match the rescued victims. This means at least 3 other children were held here and are now missing. Meanwhile, public outrage is mounting. Social activists are demanding a sweeping investigation into everyone who ever worked in Diddy's home, from managers to maids, drivers, and security staff. Several former workers are already coming forward with strange recollections, unusual sounds coming from under the floors at night, mysterious cars arriving at 3 or 4 a.m., and off-limits areas they were never allowed to question. One former gardener recalled, "I once saw a little girl looking out a basement window, her eyes terrified, then she vanished. I thought I imagined it, but now I'm not so sure." Such testimonies are adding pressure to the investigation. Number 1 can claim this was an accident or misunderstanding anymore. 6 imprisoned children. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a system, and systems don't run themselves. Someone was in control. 3. Diddy, the dark side behind the fame in the eyes of the public. Sean Diddy Combs was the quintessential American success story, rising from nothing to become a billionaire, a legendary music producer, a multi-sector entrepreneur, a fashion icon, and one of the most influential figures in pop culture for over 3 decades. But when that basement was opened, that image shattered instantly. People began to look back, not with admiration but with suspicion that had been buried for far too long. The truth is, the warning signs around Diddy didn't just appear today. In recent years, a growing list of allegations and lawsuits had already begun to unveil a much darker, far less glamorous side of him. Most notably, in November 2023, singer Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex-girlfriend of nearly a decade, filed a lawsuit accusing him of prolonged physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. In the 35-page complaint, Cassie detailed young girl casting sessions organized by Diddy, euphemistically labeled private auditions, under the pretense of scouting models for fashion brands or talent for his music label. What was truly chilling was that most of these sessions had no supervision, no recordings, and no official records. Cassie described them as secret rituals where victims were led into private rooms, served hard liquor, and often coerced into using drugs. In a conversation with her attorney, she hinted that some of the girls were very young and not all of them came back. The case was later quietly settled and all records sealed, something that often happens when powerful people want to silence a scandal before it explodes. Shortly afterward, a wave of other women came forward. A model known as Jane Doe, identity protected, claimed she was locked in a private room for 4 hours. During a 2019 party at Diddy's Holmby Hills mansion, stripped of her phone and unable to contact anyone. Diddy claimed it was for safety, but no one explained safety from what. She added, there were rooms guests were never allowed to enter, and if you accidentally wandered in, security would escort you out immediately. Another account came from Aubrey O'Day, a former member of the girl group Danity Kane, formed by Diddy on the reality show Making the Band. In a 2022 interview, Aubrey bluntly said, there were young girls brought to Diddy's house for auditions and no one from our team ever saw them again. If you asked about them, you got ignored. If you pushed, you lost your job. At the time, her words were dismissed as bitterness or post-showbiz drama. But after the FBI raid, they took on chilling new significance, suddenly fitting perfectly into a picture now beginning to emerge. A former member of Diddy's internal security team has also started speaking out. He did not reveal his real name but claimed he was assigned to guard the basement area, which he had assumed was just audio storage. There were no cameras in that hallway. We were told not to ask questions and to stay away unless ordered. Even when Diddy was away for extended periods, we never checked it. A separate manager handled everything, a man who never spoke to anyone. So who was this manager? The FBI has not released his name, but several reporters have begun tracing a man named Christopher Jordan, who appeared in a few behind-the-scenes photos with Diddy but has no public online footprint. Jordan is believed to have been in charge of internal logistics operations, a vague title that essentially covered anything no one else was allowed to know about. More and more testimonies are beginning to paint a clear picture. A living space meticulously controlled in every corner, where Diddy built not just a recording empire but a closed ecosystem of power, secrecy and moral detachment. Strange parties, where phones were banned. Unfamiliar faces that appeared and vanished. NDAs signed for 6-figure sums. Lawsuits settled before they ever reached court. Dr. Marcus Briner, a media and pop culture expert, explained, Diddy is one of the rare figures who managed to survive every showbiz storm without losing power. That only happens if you're either incredibly innocent or have too many people who owe you favors. According to Briner, the American entertainment industry has a long tradition of protecting power as long as it remains useful. But once the facade breaks, the turn against you is swift. Reality proved him right. Within 48 hours of the basement's discovery, several brands began cutting ties with Diddy. A liquor company previously listed as a strategic partner quietly removed his name from its website. A summer 2025 fashion campaign featuring Diddy as the face was indefinitely postponed. At the same time, the public began revisiting old events, raising questions about things once overlooked, like the fact that Diddy owned at least 3 other sprawling, heavily secured estates in Miami, Atlanta, and Turks and Caicos, all off limits to the press, or that he funded a chain of youth artist training centers that later disappeared without explanation, or that, despite numerous serious allegations over the years, he was never formally investigated, something almost unheard of in the celebrity world. Criminologist Vanessa Kim of NYU warned that the information control matrix Diddy had created was dangerously powerful. He wasn't just able to control those who worked for him, he controlled those who dared to speak the truth. That's not far from the playbook of a cult, she added. When someone has absolute power in an isolated environment, they begin to believe they're untouchable, and that's when disasters happen. The truth is, many people likely knew or at least suspected, but no one dared speak up. Until the steel door in that basement opened, and the children, though still unable to speak, spoke for all of us, saying one thing loud and clear: silence is no longer an option. For pieces that suggest a conspiracy, the coincidence sent shockwaves. Why would a recipient name resembling an entity previously suspected of Epstein ties appear in a shipping document from Diddy's house? Although not yet officially verified, many investigative journalists believe that DC Holdings is likely a front, According to independent financial data analyst Matthew Locke, who traced the transaction ID, we discovered the company was founded in 2017, has changed its name 3 times, and regularly receives special shipments from California, New York, and Florida, but has never filed activity or staffing reports. Digging further, a team from Insider Justice found that a private jet departing from Van Nuys Airport, less than 20 minutes from Diddy's estate, landed in St. Thomas on the same date as the invoice. The plane's registered owner, a subsidiary of Bad Boy Entertainment, the empire founded by Diddy himself. All these details, the surveillance videos, encrypted files, anonymous schedules, and now shipping documents, don't spell out a charge explicitly, but together they sketch a disturbing model, a system that may have treated human beings as rotating assets. No official statement has been released by the FBI, but a forensic analyst involved in the case stated, "You don't build a facility like that with control panels, codes, schedules, and cameras unless you're part of a well-funded, organized operation." This wasn't the brainchild of one man. Another disturbing detail raised the severity of the case. The basement systems were encrypted using Eastern European-developed software, typically employed by underground networks to manage covert systems and avoid tracing. This suggests the owner not only knew how to conceal but also how to block every form of external access. Cybersecurity experts have warned if the hard drive's data is ever leaked, it could bring down prominent figures across music, fashion, media, and even politics. Their names remain unreleased, but signs point to a transnational trafficking network possibly operating for decades. The FBI has now assembled a special task force, codenamed Black Corridor, to process all recovered data. Their mission: analyze every document, codename, and financial trail, cross-reference the footage with the National Missing Persons Database, and if possible identify the current whereabouts of children seen in the footage but not yet found. This phase is not for public eyes, but outside. The puzzle pieces are starting to align, and the terrifying truth is, the clearer the picture becomes, the darker it gets. 5. Diddy in a human trafficking network. When news of Diddy's secret basement leaked, the initial question was simple: how could one man, even one as wealthy and powerful as him, build and operate a detention space inside his private home for nearly a decade without anyone noticing? But as the puzzle pieces piled up, that question became secondary. A larger issue emerged. Was Diddy really acting alone, or was he part of a much broader, more sophisticated, and far more dangerous human trafficking network than Hollywood has ever encountered? One of the first clues pointing in this direction came from an audio recording made by a construction contractor who worked on Diddy's mansion renovation during 2015-2016 in a tape partially released by the FBI. The contractor told a colleague they wanted to dig a deep-level floor. No permits, no city inspection, paid in cash. The deal happened in the back parking lot, a statement that may have seemed mundane until that deep-level floor turned out to be where 6 children were discovered. Nearly a decade later, after the initial raid, the FBI expanded its investigation to Diddy's other assets: his mansion in Miami, a private resort in the Bahamas, and a web of subsidiary companies under the Bad Boy Holdings umbrella. A pattern emerged. All these properties shared a complex ownership structure, involving shell companies registered in the Virgin Islands, BVI, and Panama, jurisdictions notorious for financial secrecy. Investigators then traced Diddy's financial partners and collaborators over the past 10 years. Among them were names previously flagged in the Jeffrey Epstein investigations. One such figure was Leonard S., a French businessman